If someone had asked me to describe my life 6 months ago, I would have said it was perfect. Vanessa and I had been together for 9 years, married for 6, and we had built a life that most people would envy. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We had a nice house in a quiet neighborhood, stable jobs, and a marriage that, at least to me, felt strong. She was everything I ever wanted. Smart, beautiful, full of life. The kind of woman who could walk into a room and make everyone feel like they were the only person that mattered. That's what drew me to her in the first place. And then there was Mark, my best friend since high school. He had been with me through everything, from breakups to job changes to standing beside me as my best man on my wedding day. Mark was the fun one, the life of the party. If I was the steady and responsible type, he was the wild, charismatic one. But that's why we worked so well as friends. Opposites in some ways, but brothers in everything that mattered. The three of us had always been close. Vanessa and Mark got along well, which never bothered me. If anything, I liked that my wife and best friend were friends too. It made things easier, more natural. But looking back, I wonder if I had been blind all along. The signs were there, small at first, easy to ignore. The way Vanessa laughed a little too hard at Mark's jokes. The way Mark would text her, even when he and I weren't making plans. The way she started dressing up more often, even on days when she was just running errands. I didn't think much of it at the time. Why would I? I trusted them both completely. But trust is a dangerous thing. Because once you give it away, you never think to question it, until it's too late. And for me, too late was coming faster than I could have ever imagined. Looking back, I wonder how I didn't see it sooner. Maybe I was too comfortable, too trusting. Maybe I wanted to believe that the life I had built with Vanessa was unshakable. But nothing is unshakable. Not when betrayal is creeping in through the cracks. It started with small things. Things that seemed insignificant on their own but, together, painted a picture I wasn't ready to see. Vanessa became more distant. Not in an obvious way, but in ways I could feel. She didn't kiss me as much. When I hugged her, she didn't melt into me like she used to. At night, she rolled over instead of curling up against me like she always had. I told myself it was just stress. Work had been demanding for her lately, and I figured she was exhausted. But the feeling in my gut told me something was off. Then, there was her phone. Vanessa had never been secretive about it before. She used to leave it lying around, open and unlocked. Now, it was always in her hand or face down on the table. She changed her passcode. When it buzzed, she glanced at me before checking it, like she was making sure I wasn't looking. I noticed. Of course, I noticed. But I didn't say anything. Because saying something meant admitting that there was a problem. And I wasn't ready for that. Mark's presence. Mark was still around, still my best friend. But something about him had changed, too. He was texting Vanessa more. It wasn't unusual for them to joke around or send memes, but lately, it seemed like they had their own private conversations. Sometimes, I'd walk into a room, and Vanessa would quickly lock her phone. Once, I caught a glimpse of a message from Mark before the screen went dark. Had a great time today. Can't wait for next time. Winking face. I frowned. What was that? Vanessa barely glanced at me. Just Mark being an idiot, as usual. I wanted to believe her. But something about it didn't sit right. The late nights begin. It was a Thursday night when I first started to feel like I was losing her. She came home late. Not just a little late. Hours later than usual. I had made dinner, thinking we'd have a nice night together, but she walked in just as I was putting everything away. Work ran late, she said, barely looking at me as she kicked off her heels. I studied her. Her hair was slightly messy, her lipstick smudged. You didn't text me, I said. I was starting to worry. She sighed. God, Jake, I'm not a teenager. Do I have to check in with you every time I'm out? Her tone was sharp, defensive. I held up my hands. I didn't mean it like that. She kissed my cheek quickly, too quickly. I'm exhausted. I'm gonna shower. Then, she disappeared into the bathroom. I stood there, staring at the empty doorway, stomach twisting. Something was wrong. I just didn't know how bad it really was. There's a moment in every failing marriage when you realize something is off, but you can't quite put your finger on it. That was where I was with Vanessa. She was still here, still going through the motions. kissing me goodbye in the morning, sitting across from me at dinner, lying next to me in bed. But she wasn't with me. Not really. The worst part? I was too much of a coward to confront it. The distance between us grew in ways that were impossible to ignore. Our conversations became shorter, like she had nothing left to say to me. When I asked about her day, her answers were vague, same old, same old. When I sent her texts, they often went unanswered for hours. Our physical relationship suffered too. She stopped initiating anything, and when I kissed her, it felt like she was pulling away, like she wasn't in it anymore. I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't paying enough attention to her. Maybe she was just stressed. Maybe she needed space. So I backed off, thinking it would help. It didn't. Mark was always part of our lives, but now, he seemed to be part of hers more than mine. I'd come home and find them laughing together in the kitchen. I'd walk into the living room and see her texting. When I asked who, the answer was always the same. Mark. At first, it didn't bother me. He was my best friend. Of course, they talked. But the more I noticed, the more I wondered. When had their friendship become this close? I remember one night vividly. We were out at dinner with a group of friends, and I caught a moment, just a second, where Mark and Vanessa shared a look. A quick glance, a smirk, like they had an inside joke no one else was in on. It was subtle, but it made my stomach twist. I shook it off. It was Mark, my best friend, and Vanessa was my wife. What kind of man suspects his wife of cheating without a single piece of proof? Then, something happened that I couldn't ignore. Vanessa told me she was going on a weekend trip with her coworkers. Team bonding retreat. I smiled, told her to have fun. But something about it didn't sit right. The night before she left, I noticed she was extra affectionate, hugging me, kissing me longer than usual. It felt forced, like she was trying to cover something up. The next day, she left early. No kisses, no long goodbye. Just a quick, see you Monday. I stood by the window, watching her car disappear down the street, stomach uneasy. At the time, I didn't know why, but I would soon find out. That weekend was when it started. That weekend was when I lost my wife. There are moments in life that change everything. Moments you don't realize are important until it's too late. The weekend Vanessa left for her work retreat was one of those moments. I didn't know it at the time, but while I sat at home thinking she was at a hotel with her coworkers, she was in Mark's bed. Vanessa had left early Friday morning. She was excited, too excited for a simple work trip. I remember watching her pack the night before, throwing in new lingerie. I raised an eyebrow, half joking. Didn't know work retreats required that kind of wardrobe. She smirked. It's just for me. I like feeling good about myself. I didn't question it. I should have. That Friday night, I ordered takeout and watched TV alone. Vanessa sent me a short text. Made it. Long day ahead. Love you. I responded. Love you too. She never replied. The next day, I barely heard from her. I texted once, just to check in. Hours passed. Then, sorry, super busy. Hope you're good. I should have known. I should have seen the cracks forming, but I didn't. Because when you trust someone, you don't look for the lies. While I sat at home, Vanessa was in Mark's apartment. I can only imagine how it happened. The way he pulled her close, the way she let him, the way they crossed the line that should have never been crossed. Maybe she hesitated for a second. Maybe she felt guilty. But guilt wasn't enough to stop her. Because that night, my wife, my Vanessa, slept with my best friend. When Vanessa came back Sunday night, she looked different, relaxed, almost glowing. I kissed her, expecting her to smell like hotel shampoo and cheap wine. Instead, she smelled like a scent I didn't recognize. She smiled, slipping out of my arms. I'm exhausted, she said, stretching. I just want to shower and crash. I watched her walk away, something twisting in my gut. She had changed. I just didn't know why. Not yet. But the woman who walked into that bathroom that night, that wasn't my Vanessa anymore. That was someone else. Someone who had already chosen to betray me. If Vanessa felt guilty, she didn't show it. She came home from that weekend as if nothing had happened, kissed me, laughed at my jokes, asked about my day. But there was something different about her. A lightness, a certain glow. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. But deep down, something felt off. The first thing I noticed was how much time she spent on her phone. Vanessa had always been active on social media, texting friends, scrolling through news feeds. But now, she was glued to it, always smiling at messages, quickly locking the screen when I walked by. One night, I caught her sitting on the couch, grinning at something on her phone. I leaned over, teasing, "Who's making you smile like that?" She jumped slightly, then forced a laugh. "Just a stupid meme." I reached out. "Let me see." She pulled the phone away too fast. "You wouldn't get it." I frowned, but let it go. Later that night, when she was in the shower, I glanced at her phone on the nightstand. Face down. Passcode changed. My stomach twisted. Mark was always in our lives, but now, he was everywhere. Vanessa talked about him more. Casual mentions, little stories about things he had said or done. She laughed at his texts, but never shared what they were about. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, she got a message and smiled. "Mark?" I asked. She nodded. "Yeah, he just said something funny." I hesitated. "You two have been talking a lot lately." She looked up, raising an eyebrow. "Is that a problem?" I forced a smile. "No, of course not." But it was a problem, because something was changing between them. And even though I didn't know what, I could feel it. Then came the late nights. Vanessa started coming home later than usual, claiming work was busy. When I asked why she hadn't called or texted, she'd roll her eyes. "Jake, I don't need to check in with you every second." One night, she came home past midnight. She looked too good. Hair styled, lips slightly swollen, smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine. I stood in the kitchen, arms crossed. "Long night?" She yawned, stretching. "Yeah, sorry. Got caught up talking after dinner." "With who?" She hesitated, just for a second. Then, she forced a laugh. "Work friends." She walked past me before I could say anything else, heading straight to the shower. As the water ran, I stood there, fists clenched, trying to shake the feeling that something was slipping away. Because even though I didn't have proof, even though I didn't know the truth yet, I could feel it. I was losing my wife. Vanessa's lies became smoother, more effortless. She didn't flinch when she made excuses anymore. Didn't hesitate when I asked where she had been. If anything, she seemed more confident, like she knew she could get away with it. And I, like an idiot, kept believing her. Or at least, I wanted to. It started with simple things. Vanessa would tell me she was going out for coffee with a friend, only to come home hours later, her hair slightly messier than before. She started wearing perfume to run errands. Her work schedule suddenly became unpredictable. Nights she never used to work late, she was now stuck at the office. One evening, she told me she had a last-minute meeting and wouldn't be home until late. "Want me to bring you dinner?" I offered. She hesitated. "No, don't worry about it. I'll grab something with my coworkers." I nodded, forcing a smile. "All right. Love you." She smiled back. "Love you too." But she didn't say it like she used to. That night, she came home past midnight again. Same excuses. Same tired smile. Same quick escape to the shower. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. She was slipping away, and I was letting her. Mark was different now too. He used to be around all the time, stopping by for drinks, hanging out for hours. But lately, he had been avoiding me. When I texted him, his replies were slow, vague. He stopped making plans with me, always claiming to be busy. One afternoon, I called him, hoping to grab a beer. "Hey man," I said. "Haven't seen you in a while. Let's catch up." He cleared his throat. "Ah yeah, work's been crazy." "That's new. You usually have all the time in the world." A pause. "Yeah, well things change." His voice sounded off. Nervous. I should have pushed harder. Should have asked what was really going on. But instead, I let it go. Because deep down, I didn't want to hear the answer. Then came another work trip. Vanessa packed a little too carefully. Brought lingerie she hadn't worn for me in months. I kissed her goodbye at the door, watching her drive off, my gut screaming at me that something was wrong. But I ignored it. Because the alternative, admitting that my wife was lying to me, was too painful to accept. And so, I let her go. Let her drive straight into his arms. Let her betray me again. And I had no idea. Not yet. But the truth was coming for me. Faster than I could ever imagine. Vanessa's lies became smoother. More effortless. She didn't flinch when she made excuses anymore. Didn't hesitate when I asked where she had been. If anything, she seemed more confident. Like she knew she could get away with it. And I, like an idiot, kept believing her. Or at least, I wanted to. It started with simple things. Vanessa would tell me she was going out for coffee with a friend, only to come home hours later, her hair slightly messier than before. She started wearing perfume to run errands. Her work schedule suddenly became unpredictable. Nights she never used to work late, she was now stuck at the office. One evening, she told me she had a last-minute meeting and wouldn't be home until late. Want me to bring you dinner? I offered. She hesitated. No, don't worry about it. I'll grab something with my coworkers. I nodded, forcing a smile. All right. Love you. She smiled back. Love you too. But she didn't say it like she used to. That night, she came home past midnight again. Same excuses. Same tired smile. Same quick escape to the shower. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. She was slipping away, and I was letting her. Mark was different now too. He used to be around all the time, stopping by for drinks, hanging out for hours. But lately, he had been avoiding me. When I texted him, his replies were slow, vague. He stopped making plans with me, always claiming to be busy. One afternoon, I called him, hoping to grab a beer. Hey man, I said. Haven't seen you in a while. Let's catch up. He cleared his throat. Ah yeah, work's been crazy. That's new. You usually have all the time in the world. A pause. Yeah, well things change. His voice sounded off. Nervous. I should have pushed harder. Should have asked what was really going on. But instead, I let it go. Because deep down, I didn't want to hear the answer. Then came another work trip. Vanessa packed a little too carefully. Brought lingerie she hadn't worn for me in months. I kissed her goodbye at the door, watching her drive off. My gut screaming at me that something was wrong. But I ignored it. Because the alternative, admitting that my wife was lying to me, was too painful to accept. And so, I let her go. Let her drive straight into his arms. Let her betray me again. And I had no idea. Not yet. But the truth was coming for me. Faster than I could ever imagine. By this point, Vanessa wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. She had become bolder, more distant. The excuses were the same, but now they were delivered with less effort, less care. She didn't bother pretending to be interested in our conversations. She barely kissed me anymore, and when she did, it felt forced, like she was keeping up an act just long enough to avoid suspicion. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, but I wasn't. Mark was different too. He barely looked me in the eye anymore. He stopped coming over completely, only texting me in short, clipped responses. Once, I ran into him unexpectedly at a bar. Jake, he said, his smile too quick, too fake. Didn't expect to see you here. I clapped him on the shoulder, trying to ignore the tension in his posture. Been a while, man. Yeah. Work's been crazy. You've been saying that a lot. I narrowed my eyes. Everything okay? He hesitated, then forced a laugh. Of course. Just busy. He took a long sip of his drink, avoiding my gaze. I almost asked, almost confronted him right then and there. But I didn't. Because some part of me still wanted to believe that the people I loved weren't capable of betraying me. That night, Vanessa came home late. Again. I sat on the couch, watching her slip off her heels, acting like everything was normal. Long night? I asked. She nodded. Yeah, you know how work is. I stared at her, waiting, hoping she'd slip up, hoping she'd give me something, anything, that would confirm my worst fears. But she just smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and walked to the shower. Same routine, same excuses. The walls were closing in, and I didn't even know it. The next weekend, Vanessa said she was having a girls' night. She left in a black dress I hadn't seen in months, her hair curled, wearing perfume I didn't recognize. I sat at home, telling myself not to spiral, not to assume the worst. But then, something happened that she didn't plan for. Her laptop was open on the coffee table. A notification popped up. My heart pounded as I reached for the mouse. The message was short. Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Mark, my best friend. He wasn't just in my life. He wasn't just close to Vanessa. He was the other man. I wanted to scream, to throw the laptop across the room, to call Vanessa and demand the truth. But I didn't. Because now, I needed proof. And soon, I would have it. Soon, the truth would hit me in a way I never could have imagined. Betrayal is a slow burn, until the moment it explodes. I had been living in denial for weeks, maybe months, telling myself I was imagining things. That Vanessa still loved me. That Mark was still my best friend. But all of that ended with a single message and a single video. It was a quiet evening. Vanessa had gone out again, some vague excuse about grabbing drinks with the girls. I didn't even bother asking which friends anymore. I sat on the couch, staring at my phone, my mind replaying Mark's message from Vanessa's laptop. Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place. I should have confronted her, should have demanded the truth. But the truth came to me instead. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was spam. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. Mark, hey buddy, thought you'd want to see this. There was a video attached. For a moment, I just stared at it, my breath shallow. My hands felt numb as I tapped the screen. The video played, and my world fell apart. Vanessa, in a dimly lit hotel room, straddling Mark, their bodies tangled together, her moans filling the air, her nails digging into his back. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My entire body went cold, my fingers tightening around the phone so hard I thought I might crush it. Then, Mark's voice came through the speaker, laughing. Guess you're not enough for her anymore, buddy. The video cut off. I sat there, frozen. My ears were ringing. My heart pounded against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. This wasn't just some affair. This was a joke to them. They were mocking me. Mark, my best friend. Vanessa, my wife. Together, laughing at me. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen, my mind refusing to process what I had just seen. But when I finally moved, when I finally felt something other than raw, hollow pain, I knew one thing. I wasn't just going to walk away from this. I was going to destroy them both. Pain can break you, or it can turn you into something sharper, something colder. That night, after watching the video, I sat in silence for hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just let the rage settle into my bones. I wasn't going to beg Vanessa for an explanation. I wasn't going to confront Mark and throw punches like some jealous fool. No, I was going to make them pay. The next morning, I called the best divorce attorney I could find. I wasn't just going to leave Vanessa. I was going to wreck her. Luckily for me, we had a prenuptial agreement. And even better, in our state, adultery had consequences in divorce settlements. I sent my lawyer the video Mark had sent me. He whistled. That's more than enough proof. We can file immediately. And considering the circumstances, you might even get compensation for emotional distress. I smirked. Do it. It wasn't enough to leave Vanessa. I wanted everyone to know who she really was. I gathered everything, the video, screenshots of her changed passwords, the messages I had seen on her laptop. Then, I sent an anonymous email to her family, her closest friends, and a few coworkers. Subject, thought you should know. No explanation, just cold, hard evidence. Mark thought he was untouchable. He had mocked me, humiliated me, but he had secrets of his own. He had always bragged about his side hustles, but I knew they weren't legal. He had once let it slip that he was involved in fraudulent business deals, but I had never thought much of it. Until now. I spent the afternoon compiling everything I knew, his business contacts, emails I had saved over the years, even an old contract he had left at my place once. Then, I sent it all to the authorities. I didn't know if it would be enough to get him arrested, but it would definitely get him investigated. That night, Vanessa came home like nothing had changed. She set her purse down, stretching. God, I'm exhausted. I smiled. Yeah? Busy night? She hesitated. Yeah. Long day at work. I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Then you must have really been working hard in that hotel room with Mark. Her face went pale. I leaned back, my voice cold. Divorce papers. You're going to sign them, and you're going to pay for what you did. She opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't care anymore. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked out. Let her sit in it. Let her feel the weight of everything crashing down. Because this wasn't just the end of our marriage. This was the beginning of her downfall. Vanessa's world collapsed faster than I expected. The moment she saw the divorce papers, she knew there was no way out. No more lies. No more excuses. Just the cold, brutal truth. She had destroyed everything, and now, she was about to lose everything. She tried to talk, of course. Jake, please. Let's talk about this. I laughed. Actually laughed in her face. Talk about what? How you've been screwing my best friend behind my back. Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't falling for the act. Not anymore. She flipped through the divorce papers with shaking hands. You're demanding financial compensation? Jake, you can't be serious. I folded my arms. I'm completely serious. And considering I have video proof of your affair, the court's going to take my side. You're going to sign, and you're going to pay. Her lip trembled. I don't have that kind of money. Sell your car. Take out a loan. I don't give a damn. I leaned in, voice ice cold. You owe me. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She knew she had no way out. I didn't stop at Vanessa. I had already sent everything I had on Mark to the authorities. The fraud, the shady business dealings. All of it. It didn't take long for the consequences to hit. A week later, I got a text from a mutual friend. Dude, did you hear? Mark's under investigation for fraud. FBI raided his office. I smirked. Good. That same night, Mark tried to call me. I let it ring. Let him sit with his panic, his desperation. Then, I sent him one final text. Guess you're not so untouchable after all. Enjoy. Blocked his number. Deleted his contact. He was nothing to me now. A few nights later, Vanessa knocked on my door. She looked like hell. Red eyes, messy hair, a nervous tremble in her hands. Jake, please, she whispered. I made a mistake. I stared at her, waiting. She swallowed. I'll do anything. Just don't do this. Don't destroy me. I tilted my head. You destroyed me first. A tear rolled down her cheek. I still love you. I almost laughed. Love? I repeated. You don't even know what that means. I grabbed the divorce papers from the counter, held them out. Sign them, Vanessa, and get out of my life. She stared at me, realizing there was nothing left to say. She signed. And just like that, it was over. She walked away, shoulders shaking. But I didn't feel bad. Not anymore. She had made her choice. And now, she was paying for it. The day Vanessa moved out, I felt nothing. No sadness. No regret. No second thoughts. Just relief. She packed her bags in silence, her eyes darting to me every now and then, like she was waiting for me to stop her, to say something, to tell her we could work it out. I didn't. She had already said everything that mattered. In that hotel room, in Mark's arms, in that goddamn video. When she reached the door, she hesitated. Jake. I raised a hand. Don't. She swallowed hard, nodded, and walked out of my life forever. The second the door clicked shut behind her, I let out a breath I hadn't even realized I was holding. It was over. And now, I could finally start again. A month later, Mark was arrested. Turns out, his little illegal business dealings weren't so little after all. Fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, the whole package. I got another text from a friend. Dude, Mark's looking at serious jail time. I smirked. Good. I never had to lift a finger. The law did all the work for me. Karma, after all, has a way of finding people like him. The divorce was finalized. Vanessa had to pay me damages for emotional distress, just like I wanted. She fought it at first, but the evidence was too strong. She lost. I won. For the first time in months, I felt free. I moved into a new place, changed my number, cut off every toxic connection to my past. And then, I booked a flight. Vanessa had taken so much from me, but I refused to let her take my future. So, I left, traveled, lived, and in time, I realized something important. Her betrayal didn't define me. Mark's betrayal didn't define me. I wasn't the man they tried to break. I was stronger, wiser, better. And as my plane took off, leaving behind the city that had held so many painful memories, I knew one thing for sure. I had finally moved on.